a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for February 15th, 2023. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, we're all just killing time with this Last of Us show until the Twisted Metal show starts, right? But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Patrick Klepek from Waypoint. Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm great. Jeff, this is the last time that I've been on this wonderful show. Thank you for having back again, but also thank you to you.
Thanks for coming back.
Yes, you're welcome. But also, my thank you to you is over your Detroit Lions knocking the Green Bay Packers out of the playoffs.
Sweet. It was so sweet. God, it was so good.
If my team can't be good, then I need that dipshit to feel bad. And so I just appreciate you doing that for me, and it made me so happy.
I pretty much have not stopped thinking about. Yeah, I've not stopped thinking about that. Yeah, go get your DMT, your death chemical that you want to feel, you weirdo. Yeah, I've not stopped thinking about that game since it happened. I'm like, man, I need to. I'm like, man, I should just go rewatch it right now. I'm gonna rewatch it from beginning to end. I'll watch commercials and everything. I don't care. Let me see. I gotta find it somewhere. Boy, that was such a good game. It's like the best I've felt as a Lions fan since Barry Sanders.
We live in though.
Oh no, yeah, like just Bears fans or I'm sorry, Packers fans were like, oh yeah, what's up, little brother? I'm like, yeah, I get it. We're the little brother. What? Like, I don't care. This is my Super Bowl. Yeah, it's pathetic. This is what I have. But I'm a Lions fan. I know exactly what this is. I'm not surprised.
0-16, baby.
Yeah.
Like we know where we live.
Yeah, I know what my life is as a Lions fan. You're not like, you can say whatever you want. It can't hurt me more than this team has hurt me. So, yeah, God, man, that was sweet stuff. Now I'm getting excited for next year, the possibilities, and it's it's the NFL. Who knows what's going to happen next year?
We got the #1 pick. I can't wait to screw it up. So that is the nature of things.
I did like the your GM. Like, we might take a quarterback. No, you're not. no, I love this though. Yeah, you should be telling people you're going to take a quarterback. I love this, but no way in hell. They're going to trade that, right? They're going to trade that. Yes. Okay. Looking forward to it. All right, you have a sports podcast if people want to listen to that, right? You guys do it like once a month or something? Like
I'm not sure what we're gonna do in the off season now that we don't have football to talk about, but
How about hockey?
At least, the pitch I've had for Mr. Rob Znacki, my colleague that I do the sports podcast with, was maybe what we should do for the sports podcast is we pick a sport and get really into it for a period of time.
That's a really good idea. I like that a lot.
And so that could be, a sport that's ongoing. Like, the NBA is going to enter into its pre-playoff stretch pretty soon with the All-Star break. Hockey is ongoing. The Blackhawks are a mess and an ethical disgrace and a moral hazard. And so, but the also idea is man, you ever sign up for ESPN Plus and see the kind of shit you can watch?
There's some fun stuff on there. I watch all my hockey games on there, so I'm on there every day, and then it's I'm like, wait, what else is happening? There's some badminton stuff in Thailand right now. Let's go.
Do you want to watch a hockey sack tournament?
Yeah.
And so my thought is we should just get hyper into a bunch of really niche sports and adopt teams, and that might be the path forward before we get to
I think adopting teams pretty much sight unseen is a really good call. It's people have gotten super into Wrexham just because of that show, and now that now a bunch of Americans love Wrexham, so it's I think that's a good idea.
I like soccer. No, you don't.
No, you
don't. You like Ted Lasso.
You like Jason Sudeikis. Yeah, very likable guy. All right, let's get into this mess. But before we do so, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Saudi Arabia has reportedly increased its stake in Nintendo again. This comes from Andy Robinson at VGC. Saudi Arabia has reportedly increased its stake in Nintendo for the second time in a month. As per TradingView, which is a website I'm sure tracks this stuff, the country's public investment fund, or PIF, a sovereign wealth fund chaired by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has reportedly increased its stake in Nintendo Switch maker to 7.08%. Now, there's a lot more details here, but I mean, what's your initial reaction to this, Patrick?
How does someone just increase their stake? I'm saying that with all are you buying out other shareholders by paying more?
Yes, I think you're likely. Well, I mean, there's usually the market price. There's always someone selling, but imagine like a 1% increase in an investment in a company like Nintendo. That is billions of dollars. I think it's because that company's worth more than $100 billion. I think so. That's $1 billion plus. So that's something you have to plan. I'm sure you have to like work within the investment community there. I honestly don't know exactly how it works, but I'm assuming this requires a lot of pre-planning to actually pull this off. To like, okay, now we're increasing it by 1% in a day or 2%, whatever it was. It's a lot of money. So yeah, they are buying it from other investors, though. I do not think they're necessarily going to Nintendo and buying just like stock from them, or like, hey, can we have?
I presume that Nintendo is not interested in selling a higher stake to Daddy Chainsaw Man, like having a bigger influence over their company.
Yeah.
The problem is, I think this is going to be increasingly an issue for the games industry at large, right? Like,
yes.
If their whole plan is like the 10-year, like massive $1 trillion investment into all sorts of different, diversification of entertainment to try and get out of or at least diversify the oil business, and they just have too much money, and people are not going to.
It is the wealthiest company in the history of the world by far, way more than Apple. Saudi Aramco, if it was a publicly listed company, would be, I believe, $1 trillion company, or a multi-trillion dollar company. Yes, it's massive. So this money is just going to keep flying out because this is their plan. Like you said, they're too reliant on oil. They think this is one of the plans.
Do you have companies that, like we've seen in the past when Ubisoft has had to sort of navigate sort of like the threat of a hostile takeover? Like, at what point does whether like 7%, right? 7.8% now.
Yeah, 7.08%. Yes.
Yeah. At what point does that feel hostile beyond, or is this really just having lots of little tiny stakes in important companies? You're putting chips all over the board. It makes everyone feel kind of icky, but it's not as though, Mohammed bin Salman is coming up and being like, I really think we should. Like, why haven't we released the Wind Waker HD collection?
Yes. Why haven't we killed that journalist that said that was going to happen? Like, what?
Things could really escalate for Jack Grubb.
Yeah. He's already in Nintendo jail. Do something about him.
And so that's, you look at, lots of big companies like Disney was just dealing with this, recently, where you have investors that like want them to become on boards that want to then influence the direction of these companies. If we remain at the stage where it's just trying to make a bunch of money and you get to claim you're part of a bunch of entertainment properties, I can see a lot of companies kind of just looking the other way, even if they could wave a magic wand and prevent it from happening. But what happens when all of a sudden these stakes start to become influential, and they start to become a shareholder that wants to nudge in the direction of something or other? What happens to the companies then? We're not at that stage, but it's certainly, I'm sure they are having conversations about what do we do if this jumps from 7% to 20%.
Right. And what this does is it puts the pieces on the board for activist investors to if they want to. There's one party you can go to now. You go to Saudi Aramco, go PIF, and you say, hey, come join us in trying to make changes at Nintendo. You have enough power to to really sway that process. And so it's by consolidating this stuff in something that would be pretty hard to control or hard to deal with or hard to contend with. Yeah, Nintendo's got to be at least a little bit wary, but also this is the system, right? Anyone can invest, and you kind of can't stop them. It's publicly traded. Once those shares leave you, anyone who wants to sell them to anybody can buy them. And so you're going to have to continue to deal with this. Now, I mean, the black humor aside, this is, Saudi Arabia has murdered journalists. This is a vile regime, and it's hard for me to then go immediately like, well, now I can't do anything with Nintendo games. It's not hard. That is my first impulse. Like, I'm like, this sucks. This is terrible. But it's not just Nintendo. It's Capcom, SNK. I think Konami. There's a whole handful of things that they've invested in. So it's going to be unavoidable. But then I get why, like, the first thing people are going to say to me, someone who talked about Hogwarts Legacy a lot last week. And the difference for me there is with Hogwarts Legacy, there was two things with it where I wanted to listen to the people who were calling for a boycott. I never called for one myself, but I wanted to listen to the people who are doing that because it just doesn't hurt at all to listen. And then I just didn't want to play it because my trans friends were saying that would be one more hurtful thing in a world of hurtful things. And so it's like it was a personal decision on that side of things. And then when it comes to something like the PIF and Saudi Aramco and Saudi Arabia, it's just so oppressive. It's so huge. It affects everyone to a certain extent. That it's like even my personal decision feels meaningless at this point. But also that is hypocrisy. It is hypocrisy if people are like, no, I'm taking a stand on this, and you should too. Criticize me. I'm open to that. I just don't know what to do in every situation, and it just feels terrible, Patrick. I really don't know what the answer is. I
mean, the short answer is we all deal in moral compromises under capitalism, and this is just another example in which, if you want to enjoy the entertainment products that you enjoy, you are going to engage in a moral compromise. I think in the conversation we had on Waypoint Radio last week about Hogwarts Legacy, which I think, touches on stuff like this. I think it's like slightly different when you have a singular person expressing singular beliefs targeted at a singular set of people. That feels so incredibly personal.
It feels like you're joining in that at a certain point. Correct. Yes, that's what it is. But
it is also the case that you're going to draw the lines at different places based on your own personal beliefs, the people who are in your life that like mean something to you, in which then certain actions engaged against a certain set of people or sets of people is going to impact you more. And so I think Hogwarts Legacy was a flashpoint because it was so hyper specific, whereas when we're dealing with Saudi Arabia, it's more like broadly oppressive, obviously more targeted at women and like certain minorities. Like we can draw all the way down there, but I think that is not necessarily to absolve you of moral compromise of those moral compromises.
No one can be absolved. That's the whole thing, right? There is no absolution under any of this. It's just, you're right, the moral lines get drawn when and where you can, and it's if everyone always chooses to ignore them all the time, I get that. I think that's nihilism. But I understand that impulse. It is one of the only viable options you're given in this system. And yes, it can feel meaningless to draw those lines occasionally, but we do when and where we can. And I think I will be thinking about this going forward when I see Nintendo games, SNK games. I mean, I've been thinking about
SNK is more. I think like there's a big difference. I think between 7%. And SNK's
96%. Yes, right.
That's totality. Yep. They own that, right? Like that. Like it is going to be. That Metal Slug Tactics game. Looks sick.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I was looking for that so hard. It looks so good. It's like so my shit. It looks incredible. And now every time I think about that game, I'm thinking about Saudi Arabia. And it goes back to that. I'm bummed, and I just don't want to be bummed when I'm going to play my games. And that makes it like that really is so reductive. But it's that simple for me a lot of times.
Yeah, but I think it is important, regardless of which situations edge into either I'm okay with this or it's acknowledging that you're making the compromise. I think that is a huge part of what happened with Hogwarts Legacy was a lot of people. And once you sifted through all of the right-wing bad faith, entanglements, engagements who were clearly jumping on top of a situation that was causing a lot of people who do have empathy and care for trans people a lot of anxiety over what they do and their hangups over this specific game. I think at the end of the day, where you start with is acknowledging that those hangups and anxieties exist. And rather than like me using the situation to necessarily wave my finger at like what you do or don't do, go with God, figure that out yourself. It's not for me to necessarily do that work for you. But when you just acknowledge that you are making those compromises along the way is the first part of acknowledging that like, the system is corrupt. You're never going to be fully clean. But if your response to that is to put up your hands and just go, well, then none of it matters. Well, then that's the nihilism that, is makes you complicit as opposed to acknowledging the complications and the flaws of the system that we all currently exist in.
Yep. And it's these quandaries are only going to get more complicated as we go along, and our global economy gets us more entangled with more things that we just haven't solved these things before. And now, all right, I guess this is what we're doing. And the whataboutism is going to kill us all in the end. So we just got, you're right. You just got to stop a little bit and just acknowledge along the way what is happening and remind yourself that this, a better world is possible. But while we're dealing with this, we could still just have some incrementalism, a little bit of incrementalism of make something 1% better for someone in your choices, and that's sometimes still really worth it and can mean a lot to them. So
I will be curious what happens if Nintendo ever gets asked about this, right? Like how they frame their feelings on it, just because they're the kind of company that'd be so curious how they obviously they'll probably sidestep it, right? Because they can just say, these are the things that are out of our control, it's only 7%, yada yada. But if Nintendo in a shareholder meeting was to be asked about Saudi Arabia's investment, how does the company view it is what I would be looking for. Whether anyone actually asked that question, I don't know, but it would have to come from the financial side. Like it's, you're never going to get any of the, even if you were to pin down Nintendo's of America's president to ask about that, they're going to sidestep that. They're not going to give you a genuine answer.
Right. We have a lot of different investors and our job is to make video games. Like they're going to say that sort of thing. And we can't really control who our investors are. Honestly, I don't even know what the legal relationship is. What is Nintendo's power there? I don't know how much they have. I fully don't understand it. Usually when I say something like that, someone reaches out to me and then we can explain it the next day. So looking forward to that. All right, moving along. Apex Legends Revelry update spurs the Steam concurrent player rate to an all-time high. This comes from Andrew McMahon at Twinfinite. As of February 14th, 2023, Apex Legends Season 16 has officially begun, shaking the beloved Battle Royale up considerably by adding in a new class system and gameplay perk that puts a heavy emphasis on strategy. And while it has barely even been a day since the Revelry update has been out, it looks like the gamble has paid off as the player count is already increasing drastically. According to recent Steam charts, Apex Legends has just passed its previous record for the highest concurrent players on PC, with over 600,000 logging on and playing the new the new Revelry update. This number puts the game right behind Dota 2 as one of the most played games on Steam across all categories. That's like a pretty good sign for a game where it's like I don't really know what the stickiness or the return factor is for a game like this when they put out new stuff. Is it appealing to a smaller and smaller audience, or is it able to grow? Now this is just Steam numbers, and the game originally launched outside of Steam. It didn't have a Steam launch. It was just on EA Origin for a very long time, and now it's on Steam, and so this is its highest in Steam. That's not saying it's highest of all time, but still, it is, at least for the Steam numbers, it is charting upwards, which is, if you're running a free-to-play live service game, that's still what you want to be seeing, because you want to be able to invest more, and the only way you could really justify that is if you see that line going up and to the right?
Yeah, and especially given the bloodbath of live service games that we've had in the past, month and change, it just goes to show this pattern of game companies thinking, well, this is the money pile. This is where we got to start making these games. Well, it turns out it's also a money pit, and that they're extremely hard to do. You've got games. What was it? Was it Rumblepocalypse? Was that the
Rumbleverse?
Rumbleverse. A well-liked game.
Yes, nothing wrong with that game, right?
Because frequently what you get is, whatever the Ubisoft, live service game of the week is. A lot of times you'll get games that are just kind of half-baked, an idea that hope they're going to grasp onto something and they can go from there. You got a game like Rumbleverse that, by all accounts, was extremely well made, and it just turns out the cost of running them is so high. In order to get that number to keep going up is so difficult that you can do what is ostensibly the right thing, which is to make a good video game and publish it. And it doesn't matter because the live service part is a totally different alchemy that you cannot necessarily predict. And I would suspect that we're going to see, well, maybe not Ubisoft, because I think later in your rundown you have yet another one of these live service games.
The one that they haven't canceled yet. Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, Absby in the chat pointing out, Final Fantasy VII, the first Soldier, a game that I don't think even launched in certain territories and certain platforms, and it's just a really difficult nut to crack. And so I'll be very curious to see what companies' approaches are to this kind of like genre and model going forward, because it feels a little bit similar to kind of like streaming services in which there was a big land rush and now there are some prominent players. And if you're going to come to the table with a new one, you've got to have something really compelling to pitch, because the whole point of the live service games is it becomes part of your daily or weekly routine. Like the notion that I don't think a Destiny player is sitting around going, other than when they're complaining about Destiny, but they're complaining about Destiny because they want Destiny to be better. They're not complaining about Destiny because they want another Destiny-like to come along and steal them away. It's where their friends are. It's where their habits are. And so once you're in that orbit, once you're sticky to that game, it might not be hard to peel them off for a little bit to try something new, but the notion that they're going to stick around, invest in the ecosystem, I think now between, Warzone and Fortnite and Apex Legends and, pick your, any number, like it's a small group relative to the amount of games that come out on even on a daily basis. But I think it's going to be incredibly hard for all that many games to crack into that pie, or that pie is just not going to be big enough to justify the effort and expense along the way.
Yeah, and it's the tough thing here is where do these companies retreat to, right? Where do they they're
expensive single player games?
They're not going to do that, right? Yeah, they're not going back to. They're like, we saw the promised land with live service games, and it didn't work out. But that doesn't mean we're not going to look for the next grift. We are looking for the next get rich quick scheme, and we are not necessarily going back to big expensive AAA single player games. Now EA has found some sort of a balance there a little bit. They have Dead Space doing very well. They have Respawn working on Apex Legends, but they're also making a couple Star Wars single player games and then like a tactics game with an outside developer. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But EA's making it work because they're spending a lot of money on licenses, and that's how they could justify it. That's how it makes sense to them. All right, okay, well, what is everyone else going to do? Most of these companies, I don't think, like Ubisoft is just not going to go back and do the way, or make games the way it used to. It is going to look for something else along the lines of a mutant version of live service games, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's, the big question with the future of Assassin's Creed and probably Far Cry and any other. I mean, but that's the thing that would worry me, right? Is that Ubisoft's entire model for the past 15 years has been to find this singular foundation and then glom a lot of other ideas around it, right? So they established that with Assassin's Creed. And then everything they've made since then, we joke about the towers, but like, it's because it worked. It was a good model. You could put a lot of different themings and gameplay styles around it, and people really loved it. Now, those styles are still working for people. Those games are very popular, but they're trying to move over to this live service idea. And it's like, well, what happens if the Assassin's Creed live service game stumbles out of the gate? They're already investing an enormous amount of resources into probably their Far Cry one. It makes me very worried for the future of that company, because it felt like a company that had a lot of eggs in many baskets. Yeah. And increasingly, it's a company with a couple of really big eggs putting in like one basket. And given the way other things are faltering, even as you have like a game like Valhalla selling a bajillion copies, but when you can have a game sell that well and you still feel like the company is, a couple of years away from teetering on a knife's edge, that's a bad place to be. I don't think that Avatar game is going to sell very well. Right. I think Avatar is a movie, and like that's it. I don't think it's a transmedia franchise that is going to necessarily pan out. I hope that game's good. I would love that to be good. Yes, but I mean that's Ubisoft's also doing that EA strategy. They did 2 Division games, and now what is Massive making? A Star Wars game. So they're like, okay, we tried our own thing a couple times. It didn't fully take off. So now go make a licensed game version of that. And so, okay, all right. I guess that's the strategy right now. That's the popular play, is do the same thing but with a license. And where have we seen that? Avengers. Like there's no guarantees here, and sometimes it can go very, very bad for these publishers. So they're all in super precarious positions. I mean, God, you mentioned like, they sell a ton of copies of Valhalla, and even that's like doesn't seem like it's enough. Just this week, I'm hearing someone tell me like, yeah, Call of Duty, it's selling great, and they're still not happy with the performance of Call of Duty at Activision. And I'm just like, well, what is going on over there, guys? Where do you think you could go from here? And the answer is they know they have no path forward, which is why they're desperate for this Microsoft acquisition to go through, because they have no plan for what happens if that doesn't happen. It's wild out there. So to bring it back to Apex Legends, when a company does have one of these and it is able to print money, boy, is it worth all
all the money in the world to keep that going and to not mess that up. But at the same, it's like, well, does that unlock creative potential across that publisher, or at least at the developer responsible for it? And the answer again is no. Like that's what they Titanfall Legends, they canceled it because they're like, yeah, sure, Apex Legends could have up and down, they could have growth spurts, but we don't see a future in which we can justify a $100 million investment in a single player campaign that we would put into the Titanfall or the Apex Legends launcher, because that's just money sucking away from the thing that actually does make money, Apex Legends. It's like,
Well, and I also wonder, as big as Apex Legends is, where is Titanfall? Like, Titanfall is a non-existent brand at this point, right? Like, Titanfall 2, one of my favorite single-player games of all time, but like that has no mind share.
No.
With
that's why the Titanfall Legends was going to be, we'll bring back BT, but you and BT
who gives a shit? They do.
Yes, but you're going to be running into Apex Legends characters throughout that game. Like, that was the plan.
But I guess that was what I was getting at. I was like, well, but does anyone who's playing Apex Legends care all that much about playing a single player like offshoot of Apex Legends? I don't know. Like, I could see, like, EA is very easy to beat up. They're extremely good at like ruining studios and franchises. They had the Star Wars license taken away from them because they were such poor stewards. So in no way is this a defense of EA, but also I can imagine it being hard to justify. Like, are people playing Apex Legends? Because, man, we love the world of Apex Legends. And you're seeing Riot kind of do this, right? Where like they actually have been able to take League of Legends and build out a fandom that extends beyond. Like, I watched the Arcane show. Like, that show was sick as shit. I can't wait for season 2. But like, that's really hard to pull off, and I'm not sure there's necessarily a justification or evidence that Apex Legends has reached that. And it may just be the case that Apex Legends is an incredibly good game, and you should just keep making that game, because there's no guarantee that, like, you know, a Titanfall Legends or an Apex Legends Horizon Zero turns out to be something that people want to show up for. I would have. And
it's like, you know, if Mohammed Alavi was the guy that was spearheading the Titanfall Legends thing, and he did, you know, no Russian and all gillied up for Call of Duty. So he's like this, you know, star designer. When he left, there was that project, no matter what the number said on the spreadsheet,
that's hard.
It was pretty much not going to happen anymore.
Right.
All right, let's move on here. The more rumors swirling around that Zelda Switch OLED model. The Zelda Switch OLED pre-orders could kick off at GameStop on the 10th of March. This comes from My Nintendo News. It is looking increasingly likely that the leaked The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo Switch OLED model console is the real deal. Today, YouTube channel Nintendo Prime has published an image of a new Nintendo Switch SKU on GameStop's internal system, which has a date of Friday, 10th of March. This date is most likely when the all-important pre-order program could begin at North American video game retailers. This is something that leaked late last year. Then when that latest trailer came out, the little switch that they had inside the game had the same design as the leaked images. So people are like, well, that kind of gives credence to it. Seemed like this is going to happen. It is a bit weird that they didn't announce it with the pre-orders of the game at the recent Nintendo Direct, right?
It's a little weird, but I think, you know, tied in with that game being $70 and Nintendo also simultaneously putting out a statement that's like, not every game. Like, look, you know, you want the clearest signal that they're like, we are at least finally working our way towards another Switch is like, hey, we know we got one last big one. We're going to extract every last dime out of this game that we have spent an entire generation making, while we have withholden another Mario game from Mario Die Hard. There's a new Mario movie coming out, and then I'm putting out another fucking Mario game. It's a separate aside.
No, my friend his theory is they're gonna reissue Super Mario 3D All Stars, the game that went away. It was only out for 6 months. They're gonna reissue it, and that's what they're gonna do. And I'm like, oh my god, that's so Nintendo. That's probably what they're gonna do.
You get a 2-week window, like during the opening box office.
Exactly. And they'll make a big deal. It's like it's gonna go away again fast, and then you'll find it on shelves for months, years later. It's like, oh my god, all right, Nintendo. Thank you so much.
Someone in the chat calling it the Nintendo Vault. I mean, it is. That it is the equivalent of the Disney Vault. Like they have stumbled their way into that all over again. But you're right that it would have made more sense for it all to be together. But I think we are going to see a steady drumbeat of them milking every possible Zelda announcement between now and May. And so maybe if on a spreadsheet you could just like you could understand from a marketing perspective, putting this all together, doing it all at once, my guess is you could get a lot of extra juice by just doing something in March, something in late. Like there's going to be a little bit of Nintendo every couple of weeks leading up to May. And I think that is just part of this drumbeat. And also, like, you know, pre-order the game on the eShop and then also squeeze someone for like an OLED, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to be getting every dime out of people using every bit of goodwill and hopefully backing it up by an extraordinary game. I'm sure the game will be excellent as well. But it is clear they see a really prime opportunity here in which, like, they're not going to have a game this big, you know, probably for a minute. Even like a Metroid Prime 4 or something. I don't think gets anywhere close to what this game represents. I don't even think a Mario game, like even a Mario Odyssey 2 or whatever they would announce. I think Breath of the Wild is a singular electric event for Nintendo. In terms of their single player games, is as close as they're going to get to sort of like Animal Crossing at the beginning of COVID. And like, this game is going to be fucking huge. They know it, and that's why they're going to just keep doing whatever they can to talk about it as frequently as possible between now and May.
Yeah, and I think this is something that they could announce in a specific direct about Zelda. It could be something that's just a Twitter post. They could do it however they want. And you're right, this can be a beat that doesn't really cause any problems because there's no way they include the game in this bundle. Like, this is just going to be that same system. It's like the Animal Crossing system, which was just a system, no game. So it's like, well, if you already pre-ordered the game, why not get the system to go along with it? And I think they're like thinking, okay, a lot of people did not upgrade to the OLED when the OLED came out. But a lot of people did buy a Switch right at the beginning of the generation to play Zelda. They're going to buy this new Zelda. Why not give them every chance to just say, okay, now we will upgrade our Switch again? And that's one last sort of push to be like, okay, now all these other older Switches are getting pushed off to cousins and to secondhand markets, and we're just going to create one last big batch of new Switch users before the end of the generation and sell them Mario Kart again. And there we go. It's
hey, but
a plan.
Birdo is here. Birdo is here. So
That's right.
I mean, who can complain? Truly.
Yep.
And they're releasing Kurokurokurin. Nintendo is absolved of all of their digital sins.
Yes.
Like, you released Kurokurokurin. I loved that. As the game, everyone else is losing their minds for Baten Kaidos and all these other games. I'm out here screaming, breaking the mic volume for Kurokurokurin.
I've been turned on to Kurokurokurin recently because we did it in Arcade Pit and we got in the first thing and I like played against Tam or something. I like destroyed him in that. Now I'm like, I love this game. So I've been playing. I played Irritating Stick on a PS1 or PS2, whatever it was, way back in the day.
Closest analogy. Yes. That is like, it is basically a modern Irritating Stick, which is every time. That's such a bad name for a game.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like why I paid attention to it. I'm like, Irritating Stick, what are you talking about? It sounds like a condition.
Yeah, Irritating Stick sounds like something you get canceled these days. Like, he's talking about his Irritating Stick again.
He thinks he's got consent, but he doesn't understand the power dynamics exactly. Yeah. It's but there's apparently a Kuro and Squash that only came out in Japan on GameCube, and it's a party game. And so I'm looking to do. We've been talking about doing like a GameCube stream. Parties. So yeah, I'm like, hey Patrick, you want to come play Kuro and Squash with us? We'll get a Parsec PC going.
Yeah, let's go.
I haven't either. I just booted up yesterday. I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. It is just that Game Boy Advance game, but on the GameCube, and it's pretty cool. Right. Yeah, I'm excited about that. This Zelda Switch OLED model, I'm probably not going to get it. I don't need yet another new Switch. I already got 4 or 5 laying around this house, so not going to make it happen again. But I'm ready for them to do that drumbeat. Like I don't want to be waiting that much longer to get more information about Zelda. They're right to do it that way. So if this is one of those beats, hit it and let's keep it going. Tell me more about that game. More Twisted Metal reboot evidence is mounting. This comes from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. Some new Fire Sprite job advertisements are yet again pointing towards a potential reboot of Twisted Metal. Multiple job advertisements were first collected in a Reset Era thread and confirmed the Liverpool-based Fire Sprite is working on a new AAA multiplayer title that is being built using Unreal Engine 5. The listing for the principal designer position describes the upcoming title at Fire Sprite as a genre-blending game that features mechanics around vehicular and on-foot combat. There's also the mention of a Steam backend in the listing, so a PC version would probably come, which of course it would. That show is supposed to begin later this year. This is one of Sony's big strategies right now. They got PSVR. They have let's make the biggest games in the world in terms of budget, and then let's also make sure that when we do that, We have a multimedia showcase to go along with that, whether that's a movie or a show. It's working really well for The Last of Us. I don't know how well it worked for Uncharted, and I have no idea how it's going to work for Twisted Metal, but they are going to keep trying this. So this game, of course, is real. It is happening. But I don't know. Would it be ready for the show? I'm like, when I see something like hiring principal designer, I don't really know what that means. But that makes me think like we're probably a ways off, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, even look at The Last of Us, right? So their strategy there is more let's ride the wave that like a game like Cyberpunk or The Witcher had, in which you're going to get a bunch of people interested in the amount of people I've talked to in my everyday life that have watched The Last of Us show and then fuck it, I already bought The Last of Us on PS4 and never got around to playing it. They'll ask me like, how's that PS5 version? I'm like, it was pretty good. It looks really good if you're interested in playing the game. And so I think that's easy pickings. Like the idea of launching a big game alongside the television show doesn't make that much sense to me when you're trying to ride the wave between seasons, right? Like between big events, right? So it makes a lot of sense to me that The Last of Us like runs through the end of March or whatever. And then I'm sure this spring and summer we'll hear about that game. Just as people are finishing up, maybe playing the game after having watched the show so they can see how the divergent storylines went. And then, hey, you've got this multiplayer game with, they've said some story components.
Yeah,
and so
factions,
Twisted Metal, Twisted Metal makes a lot of sense to me to follow in a similar boat. Like let the show come out. And I gotta be honest, the talent they put together for The Last of Us show, I was always pretty confident that was it's better than I expected, but I always expected it to be good.
Right, Craig Mason, I love Chernobyl, so I was like, show me what you're gonna do.
Yeah, like it was more like how good is it going to be rather than like is it going to be good. And the Twisted Metal show, like I love Twisted Metal. One of my all-time favorite franchises, Twisted Metal 1 and 2, probably the most amount of hours I put into like a PS1 game. Like it's just so much time spent in those games. At no point have I ever thought, let's make a TV show where Will Arnett is the voice of Sweet Tooth. I think isn't that like the peg rumor on,
yes, and then
that?
Samoa Joe is the like the body and the face. And it sounds to me like you're doubting Samoa Joe, Patrick Klepek. That's dangerous. We know him. We can get him on the phone. We can get him after you.
I'm not doubting that Samoa Joe has not put in their full effort into the role they were tasked with. I just have a little less confidence in Twisted Metal being an interest. I'd love to be pleasantly surprised. I like Will Arnett.
It's HBO versus Peacock. To me, there's a big gap there, right?
Like the Poker Face show on there, right? Like Ryan John, like
pretty good.
I feel like Peacock is more like you just don't know what you're getting. And and the thing I do worry about is the effect stuff, right? It's the same with the Horizon show that I'm worried about. I was like, Netflix, not known for like putting effects budgets behind shows if they're not Stranger
Even
Things.
If they could, the effects industry is just stretched so thin right now that it's like you have to pay a premium to get spend extra time on your stuff so it actually looks good, and no one's doing that. Everyone is just kind of like paying for what they can get and accepting it. And if it looks kind of most shows, even big budget shows, are just feeling like this is all we can get. This is what we have to accept. So that can really hurt something like a Twisted Metal, which I imagine is going to have every frame is going to be an effect shot. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm interested in the game. Like I have to admit, as much as I play the multiplayer stuff, I have a real soft spot for the single player elements of Twisted Metal, of being able to go through and get a different shitty ending from what's his face? Who's the boss at the end of Twisted Metal? I'm forgetting the name.
I don't remember. Master Hand. No, that's Smash Brothers. My bad.
No, Calypso. That's right.
Go. Good job,
So yeah, but Twisted Metal would look gorgeous in with modern visuals. I would love to see what a vehicular combat.
Yeah, Unreal Engine 5, like that. I mean, that's kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense.
It's gonna look awesome.
Yeah, that engine can do vehicle stuff real well. I mean, that Matrix demo alone, it's like, okay, just extrapolate from there. I could see a lot of potential here. This is
and it's from Firespite. Like they did the Horizon VR game in collaboration with Guerrilla, which I'm definitely not supposed to talk about having played, but like in theory it could be extremely pretty. And might bode well for that studio working on another game that you would hope was very pretty.
The imagination on this guy, everybody. Imagining that this game could be pretty. I like that.
Just imagine a pretty game without another one.
This was one that early on, when it was still at Lucid Games before it moved to Firesprite, I was hearing could be free to play. I bet it still is going to be free to play. I think that makes sense if you're going to go with a big, especially Sony doing that initiative, trying to have 12 or whatever live service games. This probably could be one. I just after that recent graveyard getting filled up with all those live service games, do they reconsider that?
That would give me some pause. Like, do I really got to pay $7.99 so I can be the guy who drives a hearse whose name I forget? Remember Axel? He was the guy.
Axel, I'll never forget. Yeah,
the 2 tires on his hands. I don't know, because the Twisted Metal brand. There hasn't been a game since Twisted Metal Black, which was good, but that was a PS3 game. Yeah,
PS3, right? Yeah,
PS3. But that's a long time ago, right?
Yes.
Again, I don't know how much affinity there is for the Twisted, that's what made it such a kind of oddity for Sony to pluck as something they're going to get by. Horizon makes sense, ongoing franchise. Guerrilla clearly going to make a third one of those. Last of Us, okay, whatever Naughty Dog wants to say, you're making a third one of those. Sorry, and you've got plenty of time because they're going to split up the second season of that show into 2 parts. You're making the third one. Twisted Metal is a little bit of that just feels like you were had a little bingo thing and rotating the chips and Twisted Metal came out and someone went, fuck. And it Twisted Metal show.
And it does feel like it worked backwards from some degree here, where the deal might have been made on the Sony Pictures side, and then PlayStation's like, I guess we got to make a game then. All right, I guess we're gonna go make a game. Let's go find someone who can make a game, and they go to Lucid, and Lucid's like, and then it's like, okay, I guess we're going to Firesprite. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Sony can pull it off. Obviously, they have a lot of talent over there, and this is the kind of game that I think can still work to a certain extent, especially if they give it that modern flair. But I think this is one of those examples where it could just as easily go wrong because the motivations were we are putting this synergy strategy first and not necessarily thinking about what we want to be making first. But
it's not a bad idea though.
No,
I get where they're coming from, and so
it's working.
Yeah, I expect the Gran Turismo, Last of Us being as big as it is, it doesn't matter what Twisted Metal does. I'm sure that on the balance sheet they have covered the loss of Twisted Metal if that all goes awry on Peacock and the game that they're making. And just even the Gran Turismo movie, which sounds goofy on its face, and then when I discovered that hey, the plot is about somebody that learned how to professional race through Gran Turismo, I was like, sure, who doesn't love a little
sounds like a dad movie. I'm down.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go. I can see myself tearing up and they're hugging at the end. So it seems at least it's a strategy, which for all the faults I can have against Sony as a company, at least, well, I don't know if PSVR 2 is a strategy, but
right, that seems like one that seems like we did it last time, not a strategy. We got one of those, right? Yes, we got to make another one. It hit this number, so we have to make another one. It does feel like that. So many other companies in Hollywood, so many other studios would kill to have what Sony has, because they want to have a big, good game that is attached to their thing, because they know that gamers are willing to spend more, and if you do a live service one, they will spend an infinite amount of money, and there's your infinite growth. And there's no way to do that with movies unless you can find a way into games, and finding that way into games has been so difficult. And obviously, there's some obvious exceptions these days, but it's still really hard.
Right? This is with the problem Microsoft faces, is that even if you put aside all their development troubles, the kinds of IPs that they have that you would hold up in the sort of the same pantheon as Sony's just don't translate nearly as cleanly to a television show or a movie. The Last of Us always made sense. You were playing a movie. God of War also makes sense. They switched to a one-shot model that maybe didn't make sense for the game, but you can see how they're going to slot that in to a television show. Gran Turismo also very cinematic. There's a whole separate mode where the angles are meant to look nicer and prettier. So, Microsoft Halo, Gears of War, they're gonna try and do the same thing, but those just don't translate nearly as cleanly as Sony's stuff does. And I just think that's going to be a challenge for Microsoft, is to try to embark upon the same sort of endeavors. Those games exist in that weird in between where they're not Nintendo, which could just be fun family fare,
which has its own sort of, specifications that you need to hit for creating a good one of those movies or shows. But Nintendo hits all this stuff, fun characters, bright colors, fun worlds that you can just do wacky stuff in. Well, yeah, Mario can do all that stuff, no problem. And then on the other side, you need to be cinematic, like you said, to make that easy transition into Hollywood. Sony has that, and most Microsoft games just don't. I guess maybe we'll get the Perfect Dark show eventually. Ubisoft's XDefiant gets crossplay. I just hit my spacebar. Gets a crossplay test session this weekend. This comes from Mirdad Kiat at DualShockers. Ubisoft's upcoming free-to-play shooter XDefiant will receive its very first cross-play insider session this week. Starting from February 16th, participants will be able to experience the game on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, or PC with cross-play enabled. The testing session will be available until February 20th with a special focus on crossplay connectivity checks and controller experience. XDefiant is the Ubisoft one that looks the most like Call of Duty. It was previously called Tom Clancy's XDefiant, but it had like this punk rock aesthetic that Tom Clancy was just wild about. But they eventually let's drop the Tom Clancy name. So now it's just XDefiant. And yeah, I
also such a cool name.
Right. Just what is it? Yeah, just weird. Hyperscape, their whole stuff with just throwing stuff at the wall. It's so easy to forget these things. And I think they know that half the time with many of these games, they do just cancel them halfway through. And then sometimes they bring them back down off the shelf and start working on them again. They can't even decide which one's worth putting their time into. And XDefiant seems like one we heard about this forever ago. It's still not out. And no, it's not, but they're putting it into test. The idea of a Ubisoft Call of Duty succeeding seems so far-fetched to me. I just don't know what they're thinking here.
I think what's interesting on some level, your point about them being willing to let a team try out an idea, run with it. And if it doesn't click, they just take it down and move on to the next one is not dissimilar to what you see a lot of times in the mobile space. So
yes.
There are a lot of games that you and I are never going to play because they only launch in New Zealand, or there's a handful of regions that get a bunch of games that get tested there. And so they get released into a handful of markets where they do a lot of play testing. And those games are out. People can spend money on them. They're just released in these tiny little areas so they can have a wider, more inclusive play test. And it sort of feels like what they're doing here, but because it's Ubisoft and when a game dies on the New Zealand App Store, does it make a sound?
Not really. Nope.
Not really. It's probably covered on some of the Pocket Arcade and some of the other mobile sites in which that's their beat and they're trying to really understand it. But for the broader gaming populace, if it doesn't launch globally, then it sort of doesn't exist. And what's happening here with Ubisoft, and what's difficult I think with some of these live service games is I think many of them would benefit from being able to spend more time being incubated in this way, but there is not really an easy way to do that.
And that wasn't the best practices, right? The best practices in the last couple of years, according to many of these publishers, was no, get it out there, make it live, start generating revenue, start creating buzz, and then you could figure it out. You could build the plane while you're in the air. And there was a lot of evidence, not a lot, there was some evidence that is something that you could pull off, Rainbow Six Siege being a really good example within Ubisoft. And so that was, there's enough money floating around that if we need to, get new loans or new investments, that stuff is just out there. We'll be able to make that happen. And it's cheap. It's cheap capital. So just keep trying. Because if one of these games hits, even if it takes time for it to hit, it's going to pay for itself. And then once that money started just drying up a little bit, everyone's looking around being like, oh, wait, this strategy doesn't make any sense anymore. And so we're going to have to completely pull back on this stuff, which is why it's Ubisoft has canceled, I think, these 3 to 6 games that they haven't even said publicly what they were. And so, they're looking at this and being like, this actually can't work anymore. And that the mobile strategy, the reason the mobile strategy works is because those games are, $10,000 to get to that point where they're doing something you have a couple people working on it for a couple of months and then you put something out and just see what happens and then you work on it. Then these bigger games their budget's going to be much bigger than that. And so it's just, they're trying to they're trying to replicate that, but it's costing a lot more money and the strikes hurt a lot more than they do on mobile.
Yeah, for sure.
Riot Forge reveals League spinoff The Mageseeker and new release dates. We talked a little bit about this whole idea a little bit earlier. From Cass Marshall at Polygon, League of Legends is a wildly successful game, but in matches on Summoner's Rift, there's not much time to delve into the characters and their personal struggles. Enter Riot Forge, a publishing label from Riot Games that works with outside developers to create new games set in the League lore. On Wednesday, Riot Forge announced a new title coming soon, The Mageseeker, a League of Legends story. The Mageseeker stars a Damashian rebel Silas and is described as a gritty 2D high-bit pixel action RPG that lets players raise a rogue mage army and lead a revolution. I don't know what high-bit means. What does high-bit mean? 2D high-bit? They're just saying stuff. Yeah. This does feel like a chat GPT. Like, chat GPT, pitch me a game that sounds like it's from any video game company right now, but just takes some wild stuff and like gritty 2D high-bit pixel action RPG. It's hobby grade. There we go. We're back to the hobby grade stuff. I think it's cool that Riot is doing this sort of thing. I think this is a strategy more publishers should be adopting.
Microsoft should do this with Halo.
Yes.
Right? Like,
yes.
I think with your IPs that have like a really broad canvas, like Star Wars worked this way, like Halo could be this way. Like, none of these games on their own have to be superstars to be considered a success. Instead, it's like, hey, let's try a bunch of different developers, genres, approaches, settings as entryways into this universe, and kind of let the studios, that we're partnering with, like, go wild on the thing they're good at, right? Like, so they're with this, with the Mageseeker game, like, they're partnering with a studio that made like a really cool looking like 2D action game. I didn't play it, but I watched the trailer and I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense why they would like have them work on like some 2D act. And then you get an opportunity where, well, maybe they don't care about the League universe, but they think this game looks cool and they'll get in, and then maybe they'll try one of these others. And it just seems like, especially in this realm of like, what you've talked about a lot, we mentioned on the show, is how expensive it is to make anything these days. Like most of these products that we're talking about that Riot is investing in on the game side, like, I'm sure they all still cost, millions of dollars, like even tens of millions of dollars, but relative to what they're spending on the AAA stuff that has to hit in the $10 to $20 million range of sales in order to then be profitable and make sense. Like, this stuff all feeds into that, right? Like, it feeds into more people watching Arcane. Maybe you peel off some people that play League. League is probably like broadly saturated at this point. Instead, what you're trying to do is get other people invested. I'm never going to play League of Legends. Not a chance.
Yep.
But I did play that RPG for a little while that they put out 2 years ago. I forget what that was called, but like, it looked really cool. It was well made. And I played like 2 hours and realized I didn't have 35 hours to like finish the rest of it. But like, part of that got me to watch Arcane, and I'm with you. I wish more companies adopted, hey, let's make a bunch of lower stake stuff that like takes place in different corners of the universe, that gives lots of people an entryway into the world that we have in front of us. And I'm a little surprised, like the fact that Riot's releasing 3 of these this year. Obviously it takes time to cycle that stuff up, and they have the fighting game, on the horizon as well, that also looks excellent.
Project L, I think it's still called. Yeah,
it seems like they're kind of giving that game as much time as it needs to, because the stakes are so much higher with a competitive game. So, I'm glad that they're giving that team the time they need to put that together. But yeah, I'm with you. I wish more companies that had IPs that are as flexible as League looked at this model, because I think there's a lot here.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest clown shoes moment was when when Nintendo announced that Cadence of Hyrule, and I'm like, well, here it is. They're going to do this. They're going to just keep doing this over and over and over again. All these indie studios are going to get so many chances to do cool Zelda stuff. We're going to get a Zelda 2 remake with awesome graphics, and it's going to be like modernized with quality of life improvements. Like, nope. They're just doing Cadence of Hyrule, and they're never going to do this ever again.
You and me, I think I wrote an article that was like this, this is it. This is it. This is how Nintendo fills the gap in between their big games. Is like, take their really flexible IPs and give them to interesting studios, let them rip on it. Then we didn't even get a Cadence of Hyrule.
Yeah, we didn't even get that, let alone anything else. I mean, I was talking about this on another show where it's like, I know that there's not a lot of studios out there. Every studio out there is busy working on something already. This is something that John Drake has said about trying to do the Disney stuff, where his biggest hurdle is, we have a lot of stuff, we have a lot of ideas. there's just not a lot of talent out there that we can just go hand an idea to and then they can just run with it. A lot of studios are already busy. So it's like, maybe Nintendo ran into that.
What they might pass up on? Other things to work on a Nintendo property.
Yeah, to work on it. I mean, I think that's real. I think that's real. I think developers would do that. And so I think this is probably coming down from like Nintendo being like, that was an interesting thing. Let's never think about it again. This fucking company.
Time to make an ARMS 2.
Yeah. Microsoft to defend Activision-Blizzard deal in a hearing with EU regulators. Just a small update here. This comes from Miradad Kiat at DualShockers. Microsoft will attend a hearing with the EU competition regulator in Brussels on February 21st in an attempt to defend the proposed acquisition of Activision-Blizzard before the European Commission, which is going to reach its conclusion on the deal here pretty soon. This is according to a report from Reuters. Mostly this is interesting because this is going to be the closest thing I think we're going to get, at least in the near future, to courtroom drama, because it's very likely that PlayStation will also show up to voice their concerns. Documents might get brought out. Like, people might just say stuff. Tempers could flare. I don't know.
Give me the Epic Games drama, but it means nothing to me. However this shakes out, but what does matter to me is some juicy emails, some documents, some gift Phil Spencer on the stand. Which t-shirt you're gonna wear on the stand, Phil? Phil, why'd you stop following me? What did I say?
Oh, damn.
Did you unfollow me on Twitter?
Oh, damn.
Get to the heart of the matter.
I'll see if you still follow me too.
I must have said something at some point. I don't know. It was very clearly a choice. I don't know. This could all go. You could tell me any 10 different ways that this all falls out, and
he still follows me. I won. All right, we'll see.
Damn.
Yeah.
You're not criticizing Microsoft.
Apparently not. All right.
This is what I'm
Let's get to work. Let's get to work.
But yeah, this deal, you could tell me any different way it could end up, where this is a bunch of regulators who realize they're at the end of this and they're trying to act extremely dramatic, in order to extract
one of the theories out there from like Michael Pachter put that forward. I'm like, I guess I kind of buy that.
But the problem is, whatever Michael Pachter says, you should probably run to the other side.
The other thing, yes, exactly. So I'm like, I could buy that, but boy, when you make a compelling argument, I'm like, maybe no. Yeah. It's just one of those things where like this keeps dragging on, and at the end it's like, this industry is going to continue to be a mess, whether this deal goes through or not. People are going to be in tough positions if they are making games. And it's like, it is funny though, just to see Bobby Kotick over there being like, I'm going to stay a CEO if this doesn't go through.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. He's like, and also we're getting rid of work from home. You have to come to the office and be with me. And it's, oh my God, Bobby Kotick. Jesus, you don't have to make it seem like it's going to be complete hell if this deal doesn't go through. But
I mean, it's hell for them, right? Like, I feel awful for the employees that work there. Like, Microsoft's not perfect, but one of the things that I was arguing in favor of the deal was that, like, at least Microsoft, for all their faults, would probably be a better steward of culture than Activision ever has. And so I feel for the studios over there if this falls through, because I think it's left as a company without any real direction. Like, Activision, as much as like Microsoft is caught up in a lot of the drama here, they'll be just fine, right? Like, they'll move on. They'll probably go on they'll probably have to take like a pause before they can go on an acquisition spree and like try and buy CD Projekt Red or whatever, like afterwards. Like, that's probably where that ends up if stuff like this doesn't work out. But Activision is the one that is left holding the bag. Like, their company is not, they've just had the biggest success they're ever going to have with like this recycling of the Call of Duty franchise. Like, where they go from here is very precarious and probably does not reach these heights again anytime soon. And so they're the ones that need to get sold. Like, Microsoft wants them. Like, there's a reason they're fighting this hard, but they'll come out the other side okay. Activision is the one that is kind of well and truly fucked long term if this doesn't actually happen.
Yeah, and it's
because who's going to buy them? They would probably have to start divesting. Like, they probably would be selling the company in individual ways, like going down the line. But it's not a great place to be. Nope. They're never going to make more money than they'll make from this deal.
And they knew this was coming, which is why at the time when that reporting was, Microsoft reached out because of the Bobby Kotick stuff. I'm like, well, I'm also hearing that Bobby Kotick knew that they were at the end of the rope and they're looking around, and they know that now is the time to sell if they can. And Microsoft did call them, but they were ready to go. that second, long before that, because they knew they were looking at it like, what is our opportunity for growth? We have min-maxed our way into Call of Duty so hard. We don't have a lot of options left. We don't have Skylanders anymore. We don't have Guitar Hero. We don't have anything that even approaches being like that. What do we do? And no one has any answers over there. So
Sekiro 2.
Yeah, do a Sekiro 2, you cowards.
They called it a franchise when that game sold 1 million copies out of the gate.
Yeah, and that's,
you know what franchise means? A second
Tony
one,
Hawk's Pro
Jeff.
Skater 1 and 2 is like the best selling Tony Hawk, and it's like, oh, and we don't get, like, Crash Bandicoot 4 was really good, and we don't get follow-ups to any of those things. Something's broken.
Slacker Chance, Singularity 2.
Yes,
Get
there we
Raven
go.
Software on Singularity is a great game.
Although we're saying, oh, maybe this stuff could happen under Microsoft, but Microsoft's not even making Wet 2. So can we really trust them?
What's that new one? Wanted Dead?
Wanted
something?
Dead. Wanted : Dead. That's a Team Ninja game, I think. And I just cannot stand that it's not called Want Dead. Want Dead.
I need to play it. It does seem like the kind of game that I would find myself charmed by.
Yes, I'm like, I gotta see for myself how bad it is, because I'm really thinking, like, once I get done with Bubsy 3D and Dan gets done with Sonic 06, I'm like, what?
Do you make the two of you play through?
Make him play it. Like, yeah, well, yes, because I've done Bubsy 3D, and that, boy, Patrick, that's a very bad video game. That is.
How much longer do you have left in it?
I'm on the last level, and I've gotten to the last boss fight. The last boss fight is just a tragedy. It is. You have to like run it. You have to run into these little things and then grab them and shoot them. But whenever you sit still, the bad guys are just immediately like firing you like with a machine gun, and you can't turn around and run at like in any easy way. So I'm just kind of pivoting in place and just getting shot in the back. This next episode should be the last one, but it's gonna be like an hour of me just trying that over and over again. So
your service is appreciated, Jeff.
Thank you. I got a poll from Monday. Do you think Square Enix is happy with Forspoken sales performance? And 7.4% said yes. 92.6% said no. Most of the replies were Square Enix is never happy, which I think is fair. I think that's
Two
right.
things can be true. They're not like even a normal company would not be happy with how Forspoken settled out. A game that I still haven't played, like I was amongst ones where they said the day it came out, they're like, hey, we found a code underneath the couch. Do you want to play it now? and then Dead Space was out. And so I've been tied up with that ever since. But I feel like the game will probably grow as like in estimation over time. I'm not saying it's like a classic, but I think it did seem to get became a punching bag in a way that maybe it wasn't deserving. Whether that means Square thinks they should make a Forspoken 2, I don't know that it'll necessarily rise to that.
Probably not, but it's one where like people say, well, once you got past the beginning, this really slow, rough beginning, and you got some upgrades, people were enjoying the magic parkour or whatever it was, and fair enough. All right, I got a new poll question. I'm going to put it in there, but in the meantime, Patrick, why don't you tell people where they can find you and what you got going on this week?
Yeah, you can find me at Patrick Klepek. You can follow my work where twice a week I join a bunch of jokers over at Waypoint on Waypoint Radio. You can follow the writing at waypoint.vice.com. You can find Waypoint Radio on your podcast app of choice. And then we also have Waypoint Plus, which is our subscription where you get access to broadly things early. Sometimes, if you want to listen to Rob Zachney talk about Michael Mann films, next up, Public Enemies, a classic Johnny Depp film. Who doesn't want to talk about Johnny Depp right now? Rob Zachney does with Nextlander's Alex Navarro and a freelance contributor, De La Sina. That'll be coming up soon. So you can find that over at waypoint.vice.com.
I could tell you that I knew I had to get away from Twitter with the Hogwarts Legacy stuff when it began to also include Johnny Depp. When that became like you could very easily slip into that again. I'm like, well, I'm out. Never again. Never again. Oh boy. All right. New poll question for tomorrow. That's actually not. That's the one. Let me get it right here. I asked, will you get or keep a Peacock subscription for the Twisted Metal show? And I have that right there.
What's the state of their free with ads? Like, what
I thought I heard they're getting rid of that. I think I heard that they're like.
Don't you get Peacock for free if you have Comcast, which like everybody does?
That might be true. I don't know, but do you have to have a Comcast cable subscription, or do you just have to have Comcast internet?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's.
I have Comcast internet because I live in the suburbs and I don't have.
Hey, same suburb life.
Jeff, they installed fiber across the street.
No way. That's cruel.
There's AT&T. So there's a Literally across the street, the
That's
houses
cool.
they jump in value by like 2x, 3x. Like they're like these mini mansions across the street, and that's where they put the fucking fiber.
Man, so all they have to do is just run it under the street, and maybe you could get it.
I don't know this. Yeah, get your cameras out and get them. Someone did tell me, they're like, hey, if you knew someone across the street, because I'm line of sight with a couple of the houses.
Oh,
they're like, actually, it would still be faster and cheaper to have the internet beamed from
the microwaves or whatever. Yeah.
Those rich people don't mess with
they're not going to put microwaves on their house. No. That would lower their property value by 0.01%. You can go to fucking hell before they'll ever do that. Oh boy. Patrick, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody, we got stuff happening on Giant Bomb. Today, I think I'm going into a little room, and I'm going to talk with someone about the PSVR 2 for a little while. I don't think we're doing that live. That might go up later. But then the tomorrow. That's
tomorrow, Jeff. So the embargo is tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm doing that tomorrow. That's right. There we go. And then let's see. I'm going to be doing Blight Club and Mike Tyson's Punch Out Grubber Lang tomorrow. So look out for that. Dan Riker turned me into a Mike Tyson's Punch Out speedrunner. Patrick, that's been another thing as well. So
they need to release a new. I mean, look, this is not under embargo. You can say this no matter what NDA you've signed. Like, where the fuck is my new Astrobot game?
I don't get it. How are they not?
How did they not port that the original PSVR
at least? How are they investing so much in PSVR 2 and they haven't done that? I don't get it.
I don't know. The original Astrobot on PSVR is one of the best VR games I have ever played. The review I wrote for that when it came out was that I think it is a Nintendo quality platformer. It is that good. It is an explanation for why VR is interesting, not just as like I get to look around a space. It is that so good, and I'm sure they're gonna port it because it would be goofy not to. But I don't know why it's not a launch game because nobody played it. Nobody played it, and the best chance for that game to get like a wider exposure is here at the launch. And I hope they port it eventually because I would in a heartbeat play it. However good you thought the PS5 like little demo thing that they did, like that team is so talented. I can't wait to what they do next. But that VR game they made is exceptional, and it is a crime that you cannot play it.
It's one of the things that has me most confused about PSVR. I am right there with you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. It was a fun show today. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.